So we got familiar guest back on the show. We got Aren. Welcome back, Aren. How you doing, man?
I'm good. I'm good, guys. Glad to be back on the show. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, yeah, we're looking forward to it as well. I'm gonna throw it over to Evan right here. We got our topic, best thing of the college football week.
So the best thing of last week, I mean, this was billed as one of the most anticipated college weeks in a while, at least from what I was hearing. And like people were saying, how could you be at your brother's wedding or, doing whatever instead of this? How could they schedule that wedding? But no, it was a big week. As my best thing, I'm not going to go over Colorado and what happened to them. I think that's fairly obvious. But I have four things, and I will narrow it down to one. So the first thing, just that I thought was pretty interesting. Michigan and Rutgers got their game done in 2 hours and 40 minutes. I'm not talking about a baseball game. I'm not talking about an NFL game. I'm talking about a college football game with all the commercials. I remember I was seeing on my phone, it was like 1:40 Central Time, 2:40, of course, for my guys on the Eastern Time. And the game's done. I'm like, did this start earlier? But no, 2 hours and 40 minutes. So I'd like to see a little more than that, especially with non-competitive games. I think some other stuff, Northwestern, especially after the offseason they had to come back and beat Minnesota. They beat them 37-34 in overtime. They're 2-2 now, I believe. Again, after the train wreck, a lot of people thought they were going to go winless. They're sitting at 500 right now. Again, they're not going to compete in the Big Ten or anything, but in the Big Ten West, sometimes you never know. So for sure, good for them. For sure, a choke for Minnesota. And then another side thing was, of course, Ohio State. We saw them coming back. That game was a roller coaster. I believe Ohio State was up 10-0. Then Notre Dame takes control. And then there was just that magical drive. It was the 4th and 9. They do the little crossing route. They get that for a first down. And then they had the two plays at the goal line, which I thought Ohio State played magnificently. So you have like 8 seconds on the clock. Okay, you take your shot, you do a little fade, maybe a safe play, see if he catches it, but then you run it up the middle. I was worried they were going to try doing something cute there, but they didn't. They ran it up the middle. They got it in the end zone. But my biggest thing and my best thing I saw all week was Washington State. I mean, this was a later game. Washington State over Oregon State. I think Oregon State was leading. They were the higher ranked team. They were 14th. And they've had a lot of hype. Could they maybe sneak in the Pac-12 championship game? We'll see. Washington State, they came out. I mean, Cameron Ward had I think he had almost 400 passing yards going into the second half. That was crazy. The game ended up closer than it was supposed to be. I think the final score was 38-35. But for sure, impressive showing. And the Pac-12 looks loaded right now. That's what I got to say. But I got Washington State as the best thing I've seen all week. We'll go Jake. Jake, what you got?
Yeah, there's a couple of best things I've seen all week. Ohio State coming from down. Ohio State, they were leading 10-0, gave up some points to Notre Dame, and then they come rolling back with that first down catch you were mentioning, and then that final touchdown run at the end. But narrowing it down, I think the best thing I've seen all week is Florida State with their comeback, being down 10-0 against Clemson, coming all the way back in overtime after a missed Clemson field goal to potentially go ahead, and Florida State finally getting that final touchdown to win the game. Gordon, we'll go to you.
I think the best thing I saw all weekend was Ohio State beating Notre Dame with 1 second on the clock. And I know that there might be a little quote unquote asterisk because Notre Dame only had 10 players on the field for the final couple plays. But
Yes.
still, to win a game of that magnitude with 1 second left at Notre Dame, which might springboard Ohio State's season, is the best thing I saw all weekend. Aren?
Yeah, I mean, I got a couple things kind of like Jake had. I mean, I'm obviously going to go, Ohio State, Notre Dame. That was probably one of the best things I saw all week as well. I mean, just them the game was at Notre Dame, if I'm not wrong, going into that environment, winning there with 1 second left on the clock is insane. I mean, they converted the 4th and 2, I think it was, with that run. That was crazy. So, yeah, that was one thing. And then I'm going to go kind of opposite of Evan. I'm going to say, Colorado getting crushed. Well, a lot of us did expect it because I think Oregon was clearly viewed as the better team, more continuity, better roster. I think that was one of the best things I saw all week too, because, all this hype that Colorado has had coming into the season and Dion bringing this completely revamped roster to Colorado and Shedeur Sanders, and even though he didn't play, Travis Hunter and all this stuff, and them just kind of getting humbled. He was at Oregon, so it wasn't like they were playing at home, but that was kind of one of the, not a surprise, I would say, just kind of one of the more significant things I guess I saw. And even more so now that this week they're playing against my USC Trojans. Caleb going against Shedeur is going to be fun. So yeah, kind of leading into that, I think that was, one of the biggest things in college football.
So just a quick off-topic question then, because I talked a little bit about that with the Pac-12 and how I think there's a ton of good teams this year. Obviously, you have USC, but you also have Washington and Oregon who have exploded out of the gate. Washington State is playing pretty good. They beat Wisconsin. They just beat Oregon State. Oregon State's no pushover. You have Utah. You have Colorado, who just lost big, but they're a really good team. Who do you think are the actual contenders, as someone who's closely associated with the conference, or at least has a favorite team?
Who are the favorites you're asking?
Yeah, who do you likely see playing in the conference championship? Who has a realistic path?
Yeah, that's a tough question because this is honestly like the most loaded I've ever seen the Pac-12 like in my lifetime. The amount of talented quarterbacks and just teams that it has now is crazy. But if we're talking actual contenders to play in the championship game, I would say USC, obviously. They got Caleb, and I think as bad as their defense was last year, and the defense is still kind of bad this year, it's, miles better than it was last year. So USC, Oregon, obviously, Bo Nix and all the guys they got there. Utah for sure. And the scary thing about Utah is they haven't gotten Cam Rising back yet. So, and they've looked pretty good to start out. So when they get him back, they could look pretty scary.
Yeah.
You
I think
mentioned
for sure
Washington State.
Utah. I think Utah's a sleeper because they did win it all last year. You got to keep that in mind. I know a lot of there was some turnover and all that, and they've kind of snuck by in their games. Like they barely beat Baylor. They probably should have lost that game to Baylor, and they've been playing close to other games. But you're a winner. You're a winner. It doesn't matter how you win, right? So no, for sure, yeah.
Yeah, just to list a couple more, I think you got to throw, like you mentioned, Washington State in the mix. And, Cam Ward has been playing great, kind of a sleeper Heisman pick, if you ask me. And I think Washington, honestly, with Michael Penix Jr., and just he's looked amazing so far, and they've been playing great. So I think if you want to talk about contenders, I would go with like those 4 or 5 teams right now.
I just make one point real quick.
Yeah, go for it.
I just want to. So I know Aren mentioned that this is the most loaded he's ever seen the Pac-12. It's just funny to me that this is the last year of the Pac-12, and this is the most loaded it's ever been,
Right.
in my opinion. I just find that funny.
Good send-off. Good send-off.
No, a terrible. Well, I mean, yeah, it did, but a terrible because now you kind of wish the conference would continue, but especially
Yeah.
not irrelevant and all that. Yeah.